Good evening, everybody. Scott Stevens here with a look at weather. We've had a lot going on. Iota has been impressive and incredible. There's a lot of words to describe what that has been, especially for South America, as this beast for November pressed ashore last night. Just as we were doing this, I was half ashore Nicaragua and then half still hanging off into the extreme western Caribbean, but it was moving ashore. It has weakened dramatically over the last 24 hours, but nonetheless still remains a force to be dealt with. Primarily the winds, but just the quantity of rain that has fallen across that very hilly terrain. It doesn't matter how much vegetation you've got there. When you're dumping 10, 15, 20 inches of rain on any terrain in 24 hours time, most of it is going to run off. And that is the way it has been today and continues to be as this water presses towards lower elevations, raging down the creeks, rivers, streams, down streets, in through the sewer system. It continues to move ashore. So we'll do a little share screen action right on in here. We'll pop over here. But first, we'll start with the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. As yesterday, as we head towards the end of daylight, this guy broke out of the clouds and then has to do a couple of passes back and forth across the eye wall. It does a little drop zone. It drops an instrument cluster to get an accurate measurement of the region, the temperature, the humidity, the air pressure, winds, and so forth and so on. And look at that thing. That is just really kind of an amazing sight to behold. And maybe before I pass this earth, I'll have the opportunity to be able to go through one of these. But that's really quite a gift to be able to go through one of those storms. And this one being because of where it was so far late in the season and so far south, was in many, many ways one of a kind. Now, I guess we have to go back to this screen and then catch on up. We'll come here in the Weather Channel running an animation of Eta and its path, and then Iota just coming ashore 12 to 15 miles south of where Eta made landfall less than 2 weeks prior. So it's just really kind of a struggle for those. I can't even say it's a struggle. What a challenge that they've had to go through and that are yet facing again. And I know in Puerto Rico, as they got glanced by two hurricanes, they were PTSD'd, shell-shocked at having, just another one. The news of another one coming sends you into kind of a reaction, and how can it not? And these folks are going to be traumatized for some time, and yet there's still another area to watch. But the latest NHC guidance has pulled this back, so we'll see if that's a potential. And then we'll roll this back. And what a great animation is. We've got some incredible satellites in space. This one coming from the Sentinel-2. And as we zoom back off, we can see that rapid circulation center around this. And these are huge electrical beasts, these massive cyclones, these big cores of rotating energy. They're powerhouses. And we can see that in the case there. And then we'll come on in here and look at some of the pictures. And just like in Puerto Rico, just the vegetation, the hillsides, which were green and lush, have just been stripped and broken. They're just denuded of the vegetation. But because of the incredible light and the humidity that's there, it's amazing how quickly they come back. But still, there are trees that will never recover and will be twigs standing amongst the green jungles in 2-3 years' time. And just getting the infrastructure back is the big challenge. If infrastructure wasn't buried in the ground in very, very few cities anywhere outside of those most wealthy of communities can afford to put those kind of utilities in the protection of the ground, which usually is protection. And this particular river in Honduras, just an indication or an example of one of many. And when you've got that beautiful home right by the waterfront, and then the river ends up at flood stage, and then 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, 20 feet above flood stage, and it's now moving. It's a raging river. And then the house, it just is a challenge. This is kind of a crazy, whoa, a little scary, and then crashes ashore, and then the salt spray presses on inland, takes a branch or two with it, and then the water continues to press, and it looks like on that road, it could be washed out from maybe just the storm early in the week, because that road looks like nothing but rocks as it Yeah, as it endures yet another landfall. All right, this is the Weather Channel. This is a GIF, and we can see just a large circulation, very tight, very pinwheel eye. But the circulation center of this thing is just a beast, and it is pretty darn close to crossing the isthmus of Central America, of Honduras, and then pressing out into the Pacific. Hey, Tracy, good to see you on there. And yes, this one is not in Louisiana. Thank goodness. I think you guys are done for the year. Enough is enough for the good folks in Louisiana. So it's really kind of amazing. And here's another one of those little animations as we see the hurricane Iota, the track, and now we know its eventual path. This animation ended prior to that. It looks like the Houston store or the Houston station producing this product. So it's just unreal what's on its way and what has already happened. All right, quick look at Aurora. We didn't get any videos from that from Scandinavia over the last 24 hours, but if you're into southern Canada, you might see some of that off to the north, especially now that there's just a little sliver of a new moon returning into the western sky at sunset. So on the whole, we're in pretty good shape. The Fire Center has quit updating their website, so we'll just bloody close that for the season and call it good. The drought remains in place, especially in California, but more so in the Four Corners region. And now as we get into fall without the summer monsoons to kind of hold the southwestern drought at bay, the drought continues to spread into Texas as the temperatures continue to be above normal. There's Iota there through Central America. But closer to home, the showers and rains coming ashore through California, and the base of the trough, this guy right through here, still kind of intensifying because you can see the yellow brightening, and then out ahead of that, we're still seeing the clouds form. We'll scroll on through this, and the rains have pushed through the Golden State, through Oregon, now into Idaho, where we're beginning to see some snows through Yellowstone, through the I want to say the primitive area. And maybe that's the term, I just haven't heard it used that way in a long time, the primitive area in central Idaho, where it's let's just say it's not untouched, but it goes a long time without being touched. All right, Puget Sound, Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia area, down in McCord Air Force Base, rainfall through the Sound, but not bad, quarter to half, a third of an inch. When you get into the Snohomish area and then up in some of the passes, the totals approached an inch. Snowfall levels were fairly high, above 1,500 meters or about 4,000 feet for 2,000 meters. Then as we get into Oregon, the rainfall picked up just a touch, half inch as we get through Vancouver. There's a quarter inch there, 3/10. City of Portland proper, the Rose City, a quarter of an inch, so it's just enough to wet things down, get the grasses wet again. Even Salem around a third of an inch, farther south yet. Eugene, similar totals. And the places where the fires had just been so intense through the summer, the Roseburg over to Baker, South White City, Grants, Klamath Falls, those places not as heavy. Though as you get to the coast, some of those totals, Coos Bay and so forth, a half inch or a little bit more. So it's a wetting, and that's really what we need. Crescent City, a bit over an inch and a third, and around a Eureka and so forth, under an inch, but you get to the higher terrain, inch and a half. Here's a 2.3. So it's a beginning, and this is really what we needed to see is the mountains and those low-lying mountains that had big and still have large burn scars. We don't need 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches worth of rainfall. We don't need that. We need these gentle rains, these half inch, these 1 inch rainfalls coming over a period of time, because most of the soils have burned to the point where they're hydrophobic, meaning you drop water on it and it just beads up. It will not be accepted by the soil because it's hydrophobic. That's just the function of it, is to repel the water. And so if we can gradually introduce the water and rehydrate the top, whatever biomass is there, then it can accept the greater waters still to come deeper into the season. So this is kind of the good side. Hey, Robin, good to see you popping on there. All right, records. As we move to that, we've gone through a lot of heat. We'll look at the forecast coming out in the next 10 to 16 days, but they're still anticipating some record heat from northern Nebraska, 77, the Scotts Bluff, McCook, that's MCK is this one up north, even in Dodge City, Kansas, Grand Island, Nebraska, 74. So there's still some warmth yet to happen. Even Alamosa, Colorado, near you, Robin, where the 62, that would tie the record of 62 set back in 1949 with records going back to 1906. So it's not oppressive heat. It's kind of This is kind of cool. We're delaying winter just a little bit kind of heat. 92 at Phoenix and Tucson, the two tied for the state's or the nation's warm spot today at 92. And then 5 below at Peter Sinks, Utah, that little valley where all that cold air just settles every single night. There's Iota, almost finished with crossing the land and will emerge back into the Pacific. I haven't seen a single model that regenerates it, although when a system is this large, that potential exists. That potential is there. It doesn't just go away. All right, stateside, a lot of clear skies from Florida to Virginia, up into the Dakotas, and then back into the Southwest. Here's the rains ashore, California. Nice little streamer of low-level moisture, almost what we call warm advection. Is the warm air containing some moisture overruns the cold air at the surface. Condensation happens. You open the freezer, what comes out? Cold air. But sometimes you can see that cold air coming out in the form of a steam, a condensate. And that's exactly what this is. Farther to the east, across the eastern Great Lakes states and through New England, that straight up is snowfall. That is lake effect snows as the cold air rolls across the lake and then through the Alleghenies and the Niagara frontier, the Finger Lakes, the Lake Champlain area, even into New England. There's still some of those remnants of those snow showers. And then finally the rains coming ashore across the west, snows at the higher elevations. And it's not done, and that's the good thing. Let's just keep the rain going slow and steady. Slow and steady will win the race to green things up and to begin that healing. So here's our temperatures on the hours we move late in the evening in the East Coast, not so late out west, but nonetheless, the sun's been down for a while as we move into December. The sun sets early. And temperatures, here's that warming. We saw that little sliver of clouds right in through here, west of the lake states. Here's your south wind, south-southeast wind. So as the high retreats off to the east, the winds swing around from a northerly direction to an easterly, then southeast, and then eventually to the south. And that's what's beginning to happen as this high sitting across, say, Evansville, Indiana, begins to shift to the southeast. The south winds return, and then Iowa and parts of eastern Nebraska, so many wind turbines. So much of their power is generated from wind. And we can see there, we come on in, I'll zoom this in a touch, we've got 10, 15 mile an hour winds with temperatures at or just above freezing. So all of those turbines slowly generating electricity through the nighttime hours. All right, come back here to the forecast. This is through the 500 millibar level, about 18,000 feet. Most of the planes fly between 32 and 37,000 feet. So this is 500 millibars. At the surface is 1,000 millibars of pressure, of air pressure. We get halfway up through the density of the atmosphere. That leaves us roughly at about 18,000 feet, so halfway. Just like slicing the atmosphere halfway through its density. And this brings about this very large trough across the western states that we saw spinning right here. That is this guy with a ridge out of ahead of it, and then the cool and snow showers back across the lake states. So as we begin to advance this, each click is a 3-hour period. We will see this first push of moisture right in through here, race through into southern Canada. It really doesn't make a great penetration into the northwestern states outside of what it already has accomplished. But then the flow turns a little westerly, but we're really not looking at any big events until maybe this guy, but that's 120 hours down the way, 5 days away. And then this ridge, this flat ridge, just tries to rebuild. And even then, the next little wave across the country is not terribly pronounced. It's just a little wiggle in the jet stream, and then it's on its way. But it's enough this time of year, and with a little moisture is there, an inch or 2 or 3, in the higher elevations is about all that I would forecast out of it. This guy's a little more intense. So through the weekend, this guy is going to roll across the Dakotas and then kick off another weekend snow for the Great Lakes states, and then in through at least western New England, and then the rest of it will happen on Sunday night. But more interestingly becomes this larger one, and now we're getting out about not quite 10 days. So it really becomes Thanksgiving weekend before some big snows happen once again out west. But let's come into this. We'll look at a weekend snow for Colorado. and Wyoming and Kansas. It starts to take form right here. Got good easterly winds bringing that moisture off the Atlantic across Florida through the Gulf of Mexico. Then it turns, makes a nice hard turn up through Oklahoma. That'll trigger the return flow is what we call it. The return flow brings the moisture back. And then on the north side is snow. So traveling. See, that's just this coming weekend. So traveling out across Nebraska, Kansas, likely to be either intermixed with a little snow on I-80 as you move west out to Des Moines, into the Chicagoland area, even into Detroit, Wayne County. South of that, it should be an all event. I don't see much of any ice in this particular one, and it's rather quick. Maybe a 30-hour event before the north winds take over, dry it out, and then shove it off to the east. The next event is already ashore next Monday, so 6-7 days away from now, but most of it's confined to northern Idaho, Washington, and Oregon before it just weakens. It just falls apart. And that's about it. Once we get to Thanksgiving, that travel, now we're post-Thanksgiving, it's all warm, it's all rain. This is all an entirely warm weather event until we get to 2, 3, 4 December, and then even on that, it's rain deep into Quebec and the Canadian Maritimes. That's all rain. And then the other side of this is it's so far out, the models will likely have they might have the general pictures right, but the details we can fill in at another point in time. All right, quick glance. 16-day anomaly precip. Above normal, where we see the greens and blues, red or brown is less than normal precip over the next 2 weeks. And there's your anticipated snowfall out the next 10 days. So the mountains of the west should do okay. And the only above normal, as we denoted here, would be through the Bitterroots of Idaho, far northern Idaho, just southwest of Missoula, Montana, this area. And then, of course, the Cascades, which typically, this is their time of year. They'll get 200-300 inches worth of water over the course of a year. And it happens in November, December, January, and February. March can be wet too. Okay. Except for summer, it's always it's always raining there. That's just kind of the joke. All right, that's just about it. We'll look at 1 10-day forecast, and we'll see right now all the west is warm. That kind of gets stretched out and taken out of the Atlantic. Some cold tries to form into Canada, but it stays up there. And really only the west and some of the central Rockies over the next 10 days enduring anything that's anywhere close to at normal or below normal precip. So that's what it looks like in November. Tomorrow we're going to come back, do another perspective at 8 o'clock Mountain. We're going to talk about why. Why are these crazy things happening? What would be the bigger picture? What would be why all of this chaos and turmoil and trouble be happening? There's got to be a divine, a God-given reason why we're being put through these trying times. And maybe they're not even trying enough to get us to, let go of some of the ideas and concepts and things we're holding on. Okay, over here on the comments, Pagan Tree has got what caused the mini ice age in the 16th and 17th centuries. It seems to be a very drastic change in temperatures, famines, etc. in Europe. And then to follow on, you should do a video on it, how it relates to current climatic patterns. I'm going to go back to the sun. It's the sun. The sun goes through these very, very regular cycles. And it's freakish how easy it is to predict it, to understand what's happening. And we can look back through whether tree rings, oxygen isotopes in ice sheets. The record is there time and time again. We could, not have direct measurements of temperature. That's obvious. We didn't have the instruments, and in the Dark Ages, only very few people had the scientific wherewithal to try and comprehend and put these things together. But then the pool of people they could have worked with was exceedingly small. And then how do you persevere or preserve your work across a generation or 2 or 3 before it could be recognized by someone else who would take up that research, that study? So there were centuries where individual scientists and curious minds and those that wanted to know could have done some work, but it's just lost. It's lost to time. And this is the beautiful thing as to what happened through the Renaissance, because that Renaissance was really only begun by maybe 60 people. It was a very, very small nucleus of strong but brilliant minds to be able to butt up against the hierarchy and the theology that was suppressing science and thought and expression. And in some ways, we're dealing with an aspect of that right now. It's happening once again. And that concerns me in ways that I have difficulty in expressing. The threat to freedom of expression, to freedom of thought, to freedom of association, those things, once again, are gradually, and we are willingly, a portion of us are willingly giving those freedoms away for safety, for security, for our own individual echo chambers. And it concerns me in ways that are difficult to put into words. But yeah, we have been drawn into this global warming story, and it's all about taking away our own energy security. Saw a story today about Australia, Tracy, where Tesla, to recharge a Model 3 Tesla now costs more than it does to recharge for an equivalent distance traveled, a BMW i330. And one was supposed to be free. Tesla set up these supercharger stations so that the purchasers of those vehicles would, for life of the vehicle, have free energy to power those things, to motor, to transport themselves. But that's been clawed back. And because of some of the policies that appear to be positive and forward going and progressive, have actually hindered our energy security. And that concerns me because it is foreboding to talk about the other side of the coin. All right. It's not really what I was going to talk about tomorrow. So we'll have to leave that to the weather thing tomorrow. All right. That's that. And we will, that's crazy. And it doesn't have to be. This, I've talked about Tracy saying this, power is here expensive. In fact, at that Tesla charging station, the bill was 58.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Here where I am, were 14 cents. And we thought that was high. Coming back from Puerto Rico, where I was in 2019, it was 31 cents. And that's a straight up socialized system where the government gets free power, but then so do the government's business partners. And that's all done on the backs of the consumers. So when something is free, somebody else pays for it. And that's the curse of the system that begins to try to assert itself on the system. They're saying it's going to be free, but nothing ever is free. Somebody has had to do the work to bring that product in whatever form it is to you. Somebody's labor has been the result of that end finished product. All right, Pagan. Yeah, I have seen his work, but it's been a little while. All right, guys. I'll catch you tomorrow. We'll do this again. Another perspective at 8:00, and then we will do weather at 9. Tracy, this is a lesson, and you learn, and in so many ways, what you pay for a product is exactly the quality you get. Whether it's in service, whether it's in timeliness, or whether it is in the quality of the product itself. That's just a function of the reality we live in. All right, guys, have a great night, and I will catch you tomorrow. Keep looking up.